I've been practicing medicine for over 25 years, and I've seen it. The world is hurting, people are sick, and even with our greatest scientific discoveries and technological breakthroughs, trends in health are not getting better. We weren't designed for this. This world as we know it, it's not our home. But there is a remedy. Our Creator designed us to be resilient creatures, and He's given us clues in the Scriptures that have dramatic implication for our lives today. Let's talk about biblical prescriptions. Let's take a serious look at living as God intended. Are you ready? Let's get well, and let's go home.
Welcome to the Biblical Prescriptions for Life podcast, presented by Heartwise Ministries. I'm your host, Nick Evanson, here with Dr. James L. Marcum, author of the 7-week Bible study program, Biblical Prescriptions for Life. On today's program, we'll be discussing a biblical approach to managing blood pressure, anxiety, and stress. The advice given in this podcast is not intended to replace the care of your primary physician, and Dr. Marcum insists that listeners talk to their doctor before making changes to their healthcare regimen. If you like what you hear on the podcast, give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever platform you're listening on. And Dr. Marcum, thanks for joining us again.
You know, it's nice to do these podcasts, Nick, and why I like them is because you never know where someone's out there searching for something.
And that's right.
And you never know. Today it might be someone that's interested in a different way to lower blood pressure. Of course, we know that stress is a problem that people have. You know, our world, Mercy, I don't know if you've noticed it, but our world is under more stress than ever before.
Full of stress.
Yeah. I mean, people are going 24/7. The media stresses me out now. I don't even want to listen to the radio or TV because it's just stressful. Who wants to hear the same old story again and again?
That's right.
We all feel like we have to do this or that. We have to work harder. We have to do this. No, we need more time to rest. And we're going to talk a little bit on our podcast today about blood pressure and stress and a way to handle this in a biblical fashion, talk about the text, and then people can try it themselves with their doctor's permission and see if it worked for them. None of these biblical prescriptions really hurt.
That's right.
And they can only help you do better. And
but we do want to remind people that we're not telling you to replace your medications with what we talk about.
Talk to your doctor.
Talk to your doctor before you try and get off any medications.
Yeah,
definitely.
But I like the podcast because there are people that might be listening to this from all over the world that want a different viewpoint. You know, they turn on the TV, they get all the people that are putting this in front of them, and but here's another way of thinking about things. Do the research, find the truth for yourself, pray about it, and see if this is something that resonates in your life.
So, Dr. Marcum, I want to know, what is your favorite way of reducing stress? What works for you?
Well, I don't know what works for me the best, but when a person comes in with stress in the office, I tell them that the opposite of stress is rest, okay? The first biblical prescription I use is from Philippians, be anxious, be stressed out about nothing.
Right, yeah.
I didn't create a spirit of fear and timidity. And the biblical treatment is basically have a relationship with Christ and tell him your needs. Tell him what you need. Tell him what you need in your life. So that's where I start, is the come unto me and I will give you rest. The opposite of stress is rest. So I encourage people that are stressed, first, start a real relationship with God. And if you don't know how to do that, there's lots of places we can refer you to help you understand that. So that's one. The second, if they're already doing that, the second thing I said, more physical rest. If you broke your arm, you wouldn't keep throwing fastballs. If your muscles are all sore from a big bike ride, you wouldn't keep riding your bike. If you were sick at your stomach and throwing up, you wouldn't keep eating food. You'd rest the part.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe the body, the brain just needs more rest. So don't watch TV at night. Go to bed. Don't be busy all the time. Take a break. Say no to some activities in your life. Take one day a week off to break your routine, to learn how to really relax, rejuvenate, refresh yourself, break your routine.
Right.
Let your brain rest too. And then lastly, do things that are fun.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have fun. Don't feel guilty about taking some time off for yourself. Do things that you enjoy. Have the balance. So those are some things. First, I turn them to rest. the physical, mental, and spiritual to deal with stress. And then there's some specific techniques they can deal with stress. One of them is exercise.
Yeah. That's my favorite way.
We know that exercise helps chemicals, endorphins go up in the body, relax muscles. It helps the stress throughout the body, better oxygenation, turns down adrenaline, helps you breathe deeply. Breathing deeply is another way, just taking a deep breath, holding it for a few seconds, blowing it out slow. That will turn on the nervous system that's opposite of the stress system called the parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
That will slow down your heart rate, that will relax your muscles, that will turn down inflammation in your body just by deep breathing. Mm-hmm. Now, when a person's under stress, the tendency is to breathe fast.
Right.
I'm scared. And that's not as good as taking the deep breaths. In fact, I don't know if your mom ever said it, but my mom says, take some deep breaths and relax. It's going to be okay. That helps you sort of break this stress routine. So exercise, deep breathing is another way. There's many other ways to break stress. Some people like music, healthy music. Heat can sometimes relax the body and turn off the stress response. Laughing, making endorphins, being happy turns off the stress response. Changing your source of focus. Let's say you've worked all day long and you're getting stressed out. I don't know what to do to make this video look the way it looks, or I don't know where to find this whatever, or I don't know the solution to this person's medical problem. Well, just taking a break and letting your mind still works on it, but it's not sort of overwhelmed by it. Mm-hmm. Another way to deal with stress is good nutrition. Okay. So remember, everything that helps the body do better in some way will lower your stress to some degree.
Right. Yeah.
Some things do better than others. And we want to, of course, avoid stress if you can. And that's hard to do in our world. But those are some general techniques. Getting rest, the physical, mental, and spiritual, the deep breathing, the exercise, eating well, all those things that relax your body, that helps the body do better, will indirectly turn down the stress chemistry in the life. But one of the things I see a big problem is coming up, Nick, is media. I think that's going to stress people out more as time goes on.
Sure, yeah.
We're spending too much time in it putting thoughts in keeping our brain too busy, working on things that we don't even know we should be working on. So all those extra inputs, we weren't made for all this input. And I'm afraid that input alone is it's like over-exercising a leg or an arm. It's just going to wear our brains out, so it can't do as well. So I would say learn how to control the media. I don't think we can turn it off, but learn how to control it and keep it in its proper place.
Yesterday I had a day, I don't have too many days where I'm really stressed out, but I had a day where I was very stressed out. I was working on this project and it did not go, just things were not going right. And the project wasn't going to end well. And at the end of the day, I went home and I was just stressed out. What am I going to do? I need to unwind, So I decided, what? I'm going to listen to a little guitar jazz.
Yep.
It was just some nice, easy, kind of fun jazz music. And I really enjoyed that. It was very, very relieving. And I hadn't got my exercise in. I'd been sitting at my desk all day and I really I just wanted to go to bed. But I decided it was like 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'd put my boys to bed already. Mm-hmm. But I decided, what? I'm not going to sleep that good unless I go get some exercise. So I went and got on my bike and rode my bike for an hour. And then after that, I slept great last night. Yeah. So, asking God to renew me and restore me and getting some exercise and listen to a little music really helped for me last night.
And it's interesting, you can do these stress busters simultaneously.
Yeah.
You can exercise while worshiping. Mm-hmm. You can exercise while listening to jazz music. Mm-hmm. You can exercise while deep breathing. So you can get two things done at once, but that's the mindset that people should do. When they feel stressed and they know they're under stress, they should try to find solutions.
Yeah,
and that's what I would say. And when we think about the biblical solution, the first place Christ says, be anxious about nothing, it says prayer and supplication.
That's right.
Pray to me, come to me for answers.
Yep,
and then
that's right.
And then, for you did that. Say, well, why don't you take a bike ride? Why don't you listen to some jazz? Why don't you break your routine? Mm-hmm. That's the way to deal with it.
Now, You earlier, you said you didn't know maybe what was your favorite way to deal with stress, but I know what it is.
What's that?
You have these 2 little dogs.
Oh, yeah.
And they're your favorite stress relievers, I'm pretty sure.
And that they obey me too. You know, if I said, come here, they would jump up and they would just be there and let me rub them. But pets, you know, God created pets.
That's right.
Relationships help deal with stress.
That's right.
We weren't made alone. God made relationships to help us build. And there's studies that have been done that show that when we have healthy relationships, that lowers our disease states, helps us do better. And that's why, you know, if relationships can help me with pets, if relationships with my wife can help my health and help me live longer, can you imagine how much better the relationship with our Heavenly Father is going to influence my health?
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer that if I want to have better health, that I want to nurture that relationship above all others.
Let's talk about some maybe unhealthy ways that we manage stress sometimes. You know, there's a lot of different things that people do. Sometimes it's tempting if you're not thinking right, you're stressed out about stuff, just to think about something else. So they turn on the TV and watch a TV program, or maybe they go find their favorite food or whatever.
What a lot of people do, yeah.
Oh, what are some of these? Why are these things unhealthy in managing stress?
Well, a lot of people don't know what to do. You know, that when a body's under stress, the brain says, I'm unhappy. I just want to feel good. You know, and the brain just does what we call downshifting. It turns on the stress part of the brain, and the brain makes adrenaline and cortisol and inflammation, and it says, I just want to feel good. So your body the natural inclination is, well, what will make me feel good? What's the easiest? Well, we know that some people turn to sugar.
Yeah.
Some people turn to alcohol. Some people turn to cigarettes. Some people turn to drugs. Some people turn to gambling. Some people turn to all sorts of different things that are unhealthy,
right?
Because they don't know anything else. They know their brain wants to feel better, wants to feel safe. You want to start making dopamine, make those receptors happy. They don't know what to do. They know what the world treats them to do. Oh, your buddies say, hey, after the end of the day, let's go out and have a beer.
Right,
And that does make you feel better to a certain degree.
Sure.
But it doesn't solve the problem, and there's better ways to work on stress.
Right.
You know, so that's just a couple things. And one of the things that I do is I like to play with my dogs. And here's my doggie here, Daffy. She is just wanting to just be with Daddy right now to break her stress. And her stress is me not paying attention to her.
That's right.
And you know what? In the relationships in your life, sometimes there's stress exists when you don't nurture those relationships.
That's right.
And sometimes when you don't keep that relationship with God, even though we don't understand the stress that exists, I think we were made to be with our Creator. And just not worshiping God creates a stress that we can't even understand because we're not made as we were designed to do.
Right.
And that creates stress. So part of it's education, and part of it is say, listen, is this a healthy way to deal with stress? Some people, Nick, they come to the doctor's office and they don't want to hear the truth, that they're stressed.
Yeah.
Or they would just want a medication, you know. Their heart's palpitating a lot, and really all it is too much adrenaline because of stress. We try to locate the stress, and they don't want to admit they have a bad relationship. They're working too hard. Another person the other day that was stressed out, and they were taking methamphetamines to help them deal with stress, and that was creating more stress. So a lot of it's education and people, you know, wanting to feel better, but all of these things that lower stress in a life not only helps the brain do better, but it also helps your health do better. Helps you not age as much, lowers blood pressure, improves your immune system, helps your digestion. As you found out, turning down health helps you sleep and rest better.
Turning down the stress.
Yes, that helps your body renew itself. So everything in the body is sort of interrelated in large ways. And a lot of heart attacks are stimulated because of too much stress. We have a condition called the broken heart syndrome, where someone's so stressed out, usually it's because of loss of a loved one. That stress makes so much adrenaline that the adrenaline causes the arteries to spasm and close. That triggers a heart attack. Other things that can cause an artery spasm is drugs, being too cold. Lots of things can trigger, but just too much stress over time is damaging to every organ in the body to some degree. So we want less stress, more rest.
Now, there's one or two times in life where a bunch of stress might be helpful, right?
Oh, yeah.
What are those cases?
And remember, I'm talking about chronic stress that's unrelenting. I'm not talking about a bear is chasing you and wants to have you for dinner.
Right.
That's a good type of stress. You want to get rid of that. Or let's say you need to protect your family from an intruder. That's temporary stress. It's good. But if you had to undergo running from a bear 24/7, 365 days a year, that kind of stress would wear you out.
Right.
So acute stress is good. Chronic stress is bad. That's a good point, Nick.
Well, let's switch gears here just a little bit. We've got some people who have written in questions to the website. And if you have a question that you'd like to ask, go to our website, biblicalprescriptions.com/podcast. And you can click there and put in your question. We'll try and get to it on one of the next podcasts. But somebody writes in and says, I've always had a low blood pressure, as low as 90/56. And recently I've been feeling palpitation and lightheadedness. I also run out of breath very quickly, and I'm in my early 30s. When should I see my doctor?
I would see my doctor right now. And the reason I say that is it might be a false alarm, but just that, making sure it's nothing serious. Now, if you're passing out, having pain when you do things, having pain that won't go away, those are more serious symptoms. But, going to your physician, they can reassure you. That will turn down your stress chemistry. They might even want to do some testing. That's what physicians are for. So I would go see your doctor just to make sure it's nothing serious. But it could be something simple like too much stress. It could be a dietary change. It could be not. Lots of different factors can do it. Without seeing a patient and examining a patient and asking some questions, it's really hard to know whether something's the tip of the iceberg or something. But usually in 30 years old, if they're not passing out, this could be just their stress from not drinking enough water. That would explain the low blood pressure. That would explain the palpitations because you make adrenaline. That could even explain the fatigue because the number one cause of fatigue is not having enough water.
Right.
So the answer to every question is be conservative. If you have enough concern to ask about it, then go see your doctor, get some reassurance. When my kids were growing up, when they were little, and they had a fever, that, I tried to pay attention to that because, if you jump on something early and you catch it early, it's much going to be an easier problem to solve. Well, the same with any type of symptom. A symptom is not normal.
Right.
That means something's wrong. It might be something that's not dangerous, but nevertheless, something is wrong. It might be something in the brain that's stressing you out. It might be the tip of an iceberg. It might be a lifestyle thing. And sometimes if you get another set of eyes to sort of help you through that, that's the best way to go. Some people that don't ever get help, they sit there and worry. Oh, am I dying? Is this? And they go day in and day out. And that makes stress chemistry that makes whatever problem that much worse.
Right. Kind of multiplies it.
So I would say for this person, I would go ahead and get some help just to make sure. But there's a good chance it's going to be okay.
We've got another listener who writes in, I would love to get off benazepril for high blood pressure.
Yeah.
What natural products might aid in the process?
Okay. Benazepril is a blood pressure medicine in the class called ACE inhibitors, angiotensin converter, enzymes. So what they do is they block, a chemical that raises blood pressure. First of all, to get off a medicine, you have to understand why a person has high blood pressure. High blood pressure, to me, is a symptom. You want to know what causes it. Are you having chronic pain? Do you have sleep apnea? You don't sleep at night, and you make adrenaline and cortisol, which raise your blood pressure. Are you dehydrated? Make too much adrenaline. Do you have problems with your thyroid or your kidneys? Or the three most common cause, do you carry extra weight and don't exercise? Are you eating the wrong types of food, especially processed foods and things that have lots of sodium in it? And the third thing is, are you stressed out?
Yeah.
All of those make the chemistry of high blood pressure. So if a person is interested, I'd have them approach their doctor and say, what's the cause? And then they can work on treating the cause, removing processed foods, exercising every day, doing some of the techniques we talked about in stress earlier to reduce stress, get more rest, deep breathing, the exercise. Then after it's still high, if it's not a reversible cause like sleep apnea, pain, kidneys, medicines, that if the doctor can't find reversible causes, I say, well, let's try some natural remedies. Greens help lower blood pressure. Hibiscus tea helps lower blood pressure. Beets help lower blood pressure. Those are all some very common things that lower blood pressure. Deep breathing lowers blood pressure. If you just deep breathe for 10 minutes, 3 times a day. That lowers blood pressure. So that's sort of my general approach. And if you go to your doctor, say, listen, I really want to be off it. He can sort of go through this with you and see if it might be reasonable. Then what I do is I have them get into this new habit or find the reason why first. And then with my patients, Nick, what I do is I say, well, your blood pressure is now really, really good. Why don't you stop the medicine for a day or two and see what your blood pressure goes? Usually for a day or two, stopping it, not big deal if you've addressed the cause of the problem. Most of the blood pressure problems, if they exercise, eat lots of a plant-based diet, which moves them away from sodium, and learn stress-reducing techniques, most blood pressure can be treated in that manner and doesn't necessarily need lots of medications. But it's a little bit of hard work. And a lot of people would rather take a pill and get a bill for their ill than to go back to the way they were designed. But I'll tell you, when you go back to the way you design, it opens up many more health benefits. Like when you start exercising, not only helps your blood pressure, helps your immune system, helps your circulation, helps your brain, lowers the risk of cancer, lots of other good things just besides lowering your blood pressure. So that was a good question about benzapril. Do some people need it? Yes. I mean, if all this has been done, the blood pressure is still high, you have some genetic high blood pressure, you've done everything right, well, you might need a little help. And that's a place at that point for modern medicine.
Yep. But we want to start with biblical prescriptions first to see if we can live the way God intended and not have to rely on it.
Yeah. And I think that's the best way, Nick. And what I do in the office is I will ask a patient, I say, listen, you have this problem. I go, you're not having an acute symptom, so you don't need modern medicine, but you have this diagnosis. Would you prefer to work on it this way, or you would prefer this way? Here's the pros, here's the cons. And some people say, no, I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Right.
Then when I leave, I said, well, at least do me this favor. At least, ask God to help you, ask God to be part of this process. And then we can, let him lead, and maybe he can
get you ready for the next step.
Maybe he can get you, and maybe you're not ready right now. Maybe it might be down the road, but at least God's part of your life. I had a patient one time, Nick, that he had a bypass surgery, age 42, couldn't quit smoking, had a bunch of bad habits, just couldn't seem to break him. And I asked him that very question. I said, listen, we can possibly reverse this disease or definitely halt it. Here's what it's going to take. Are you interested? He says, no, I don't want to do it. I said, well, that's your right to do that. This is a free world. I'm still going to love you, and I'm still going to take care of you the best I can. But would you at least do this for me? Make me feel better. That would you at least try to connect with God?
Yeah.
And no matter what happens, even if you can't do this or this can't, no matter what, you in that relationship, you can find hope. And he said, yes, I would do that. Well, I'm glad I did, because it wasn't long thereafter that, his habits succumbed to his disease and he passed away. But at least I knew in my heart that I'd plugged him into something that, that he could have. And when people are dying from different conditions, I tell them, at least when you have that relationship with Christ, that healing relationship, he gives you hope for the future. And that sometimes helps turn down some of their fears.
Yeah, relieve some of those fears.
Yeah, that's a good word, relieve some of their fears.
We've got just one more question for the podcast today, and it's someone who's dealing with a lot of anxiety. This person writes, I've had ADHD, and it's like I'm all over the place and become easily stressed, anxious, frustrated, and become worrisome. She's on some Adderall and says it does help, but when they're off of it, they can't study or pay attention. What should they do? Where should they start?
Yeah, I think we sort of addressed this, but this is a very common problem, is this stress. We talked about 1 in 3 have stress, and we've talked about where to start from a biblical perspective. And I think that in the Bible it says, be anxious about nothing, stressed about nothing. And the next thing, in prayer and supplication. So God basically, in that text in Philippians, it says, come to me. Let me help you find the answers. Okay, so step number 1 is, as I advise this person, to turn to Christ for the answers, okay? And ask him what needs to be done. And he's going to lead you to a relationship with him, which is going to probably lead you to Bible study and more prayer, which will allow you to see things that you can do in that relationship and biblical prescriptions that turn down some of the stress chemistry in life. Sometimes that when the adrenaline and cortisol, when you start doing the things we've talked about in this podcast, resting, the physical, mental, and spiritual, deep breathing, exercise, good nutrition, all those things, sometimes that changes the very chemistry of the brain, turns down this. Sometimes that lets your doctor maybe have the ability to turn down these chronic stimulants like Adderall, which is really it's methamphetamines. Okay, this is a stimulant. Those aren't a long-term solution for the rest of your life.
Right.
Now, some people might need it for a short term, but I can't tell you how many people it stimulated heart problems. They come to me and I say, no, I would get off this. And this is where I start them in prayer and this and that. And then when it's time to come off under your doctor's supervision, gradually turn it down. You don't want to do it all at once. It's got to be under doctor's supervision, and then replace the medicine with biblical prescriptions that can change the chemistry of the entire body. We want to make sure people get vitamin D, which makes serotonin. Move towards a plant-based diet, which helps the bowels make good chemistry that helps the brain out as well.
Right.
An exercise program. All of these things, getting enough rest, dealing with stress, all these things are very beneficial in changing the chemistry of the brain. So these are places that this person might want to start under their doctor's supervision, and we will certainly be happy to pray for that person if they go to our website.
You know, we've got a 1-minute spot that you made recently that talks about relieving blood pressure and stress and that kind of thing. Let's have a listen to that now.
I'm Dr. James Marcum. Do you want a treatment to lower blood pressure or perhaps to lower your anxiety and stress levels? Our biblical prescription is Philippians 4, verse 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication. Your biblical prescription is to pray with supplication, asking God for something, asking God to improve your health. Our God has the power to heal. Numerous scientific studies support this, including a Duke study of 4,000, which showed that prayer lowers blood pressure. An NIH study shows that those who pray are 40% less likely to develop blood pressure problems in a lifetime. Other studies show that prayer helps recovering time from numerous medical conditions. Your biblical prescription for life is to pray. I'm Dr. James Marcum with your biblical prescription for life.
You know, Dr. Marcum, that sounds like some simple advice that everyone can use to lower their blood pressure.
Yeah, and if people will learn about these biblical techniques and how to approach medical problems, I think this will help them feel better, and it will really help them not depend so much on modern medicine that they can, with God's help, fix a lot of things that go wrong with the body.
That's right. Well, we're just about out of time on today's podcast, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing thoughts about how to lower blood pressure, anxiety, and stress.
My pleasure. In this hustle-bustle world, sometimes you don't have a chance to explain things in great detail to patients. So that's why I like to do it too. It gives people a practical approach and lets people know how physicians actually think. So thanks for having me. And we hope to do it again soon.
That's right. Well, we're going to be back next week, so you'll have the opportunity. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you have a question about anything we've discussed on today's program, or if you have a health question you'd like answered, go to biblicalprescriptions.com/podcast, and you can submit your question there. If you enjoyed the discussion, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever podcasting platform you're listening on, and that'll really help us out. Thanks again for listening. I'm your host, Nick Evanson, inviting you to join us again next week, where we're going to discuss more about getting well and going home.